everyone, it's Jackie at Spare Room Studio. I'm going to colour in this beautiful book, the work of Ken Matsuda here. This is the Hatchet Hero version. And I'm going to colour a page that has a colour page next to it to use that as a loose idea for colours. I thought that might be fun to do for a change. And I'm going to use the Koi colouring brush pen sets that I have. I have a number of sets that are 6 colours, and I already do have some out that I'm working on another project, but I have Sunset, Nature, Basic, Portrait, Grey, and Flowers. So I'm going to use these pens again today. I keep using them in different books at the moment just to sort of get a feel for how they work in different books. I have a plate here in case I need it. I have been finding that I quite enjoy working with these Koi colouring brush pens scribbled onto the plate and then applied with the brush. I've just got some clean paper here behind as a bit of a blotter paper. I'm going to try not to saturate it too much to start with because I'm not sure entirely how it's going to react on this paper, having never used it before. So I'll get started. As I said, I'm going to use Ken's colour picture a little bit as a base, but I'm not planning on getting it exactly the same because I'm going to be using these Koi colouring brush pens. I've got 6 sets, so that's 36 colours to work with, and I'll see how I go sort of working with those. To start with, I'm going to use Viridian and Sky Blue. And what I thought I will do is I'll have a go at mixing some colours. And just use that colour page there as a bit of a guide for some colour ideas, and then we'll see how we go with it. I'm not entirely great at, you know, sort of copying somebody else's colour palette exactly. I don't even do colour by numbers very well, to be honest, because I tend to sort of go off doing some different ideas myself. And you know, I just don't pay close enough attention sometimes, so we'll see what happens. So you may hear some background noise. I sound like I'm obsessed with weather at the moment, but when you live in a fairly dry country, it is rather an event, I guess, when we get lots of rain. And when you have summers as hot as we have here, the cold weather seems to fascinate everybody as well. So we've had some very heavy rain. I think we may have even had some small hail last night. Very, very cold front has come through and it has been raining heavily. And my outdoor temperature gauge went down to below 10 degrees at lunchtime. So for where I live in South Australia, that is quite cool. That's 10 degrees Celsius. We quite often have summer temperatures well over 40 degrees. So for us it does feel cold. And I've even lit the combustion heater today, and you'll hear some clicking and banging in the background, which is coming from the heater as it starts to expand and warm up. I'm not sure where Hamish is. He's not liking this weather, so I think he might be hidden away behind one of the chairs in the family room, which is where he likes to hide when he's feeling challenged. Being a rescue, of course, we're not up to speed yet with everything that scares him. So I've got a pretty good inkling though that any sort of hailstorms, thunder and lightning is likely to scare him, given that he's nervous of so many other things. So I will have to maybe go and check on him soon and see how he's doing. If the weather starts to get too wild, I might have to give him some medication just to sort of help him get through it, and also help me get through this first occasion of seeing what he might be like when he's frightened by extreme weather. So we got a very, very big walk done this morning because I saw the weather forecast and had a feeling that we might miss out on an afternoon walk today. So what I'm doing is I've got some paper towel off here to the side and I'm cleaning off the brush. You'll see with very little colour there, the koi colouring brush pens are quite vibrant. There's a lot of colour coming off of there. So I'm just going to grab a bit of a deeper blue now. Yes, I think that's what I'll go for that. That is cerulean blue, and this one is just blue. That's probably more like I want. So yes, had a nice big walk this morning. Tried to tire him out a bit, just in case the weather does scare him. And I quickly raced off to the shops and did a few things that I needed to do. Because personally I don't particularly like being out when it's really wet and rainy either. I prefer not to be on the roads when it's like that. I don't know what it's like where you live, but we have a lot of people who do not drive to weather conditions very well here in Adelaide, and they're not very good drivers at the best of times, but they don't allow that extra space for stopping in the wet, and it makes me really nervous at times at how close some people get to you, and I find it very frustrating. And so, sometimes you leave a bit of distance yourself between you and the car in front of you to allow for the wet road, and then some idiot will come and squeeze into that gap that you've left, and you have to end up braking heavily yourself again. And that just really annoys me. So if I can avoid going out in it, I do. Adelaide is notorious for having bad drivers. It's not just a personal opinion, but the opinion of lots of visitors that come from interstate. So it's kind of nice that the rainwater tank will be getting filled up. We emptied ours over summer. We use it to water our plants and fruit trees more than anything. And then my husband has a habit of filling his fish pond with the rainwater and wandering off and forgetting about the fact that he's left the tap on, and leaves it running for hours on end. And so he did that twice towards the end of summer and emptied the rainwater tank, which was not very useful. And so all this rain we're getting at the moment will be refilling that nicely for next summer. Okay, so that's a good start there. Now I want to get something a bit more sort of purplish, almost sort of like a very purple based grey even. So that one there is light purple, and I'm going to go for a warm grey because it feels like it really needs warm grey. So this one is just warm grey. So what I'm doing is just scribbling that onto the plate. It's an old side plate that I'm using here. And I'm just going to drop a bit of water in and take a bit of the grey and a bit of the purple and keep mixing those together until I get something that looks similar to the picture that is off to the side here. So if you're a beginner colorist and you're nervous about doing these sorts of beautiful books, something like this one is very handy in that you've got your QR codes in the back where you can scan the QR code and find the original work of Ken online, or you've got this particular version of the book has got some beautiful colour pages. Not all of them, but you know, a good proportion of them that you can go to and choose to colour the same or mimic. And there are even some thumbnail smaller images in the back with the coloured versions as well. So you've got a number of options to go to there for some reference. And if you want to have a go at working in the way that I am here today, just begin very lightly and slowly build your colours up. And don't be disheartened if you don't colour match your colours exactly and get a painting that looks exactly like Ken's, because even when we use all the same supplies, all the same colours, our techniques are never going to be exactly the same. So try not to get discouraged if you feel like yours doesn't look like the picture on the other side, but just use it as a frame of reference and a starting off point and see what happens. You know, because I could sit here, I could have Ken sitting next to me, and I'm just going to add in some iris here. I could have Ken sitting here next to me and telling me what to do. And I could watch him do it and still not get exactly the same as him. And I think that's okay, personally. I don't know all the information about Ken himself, but I'm guessing that he has painted and been creating art far longer than I have. And it would be crazy for me to assume that I'm going to be able to create something as beautiful as his, or exactly the same as his, without his experience, his know-how, his knowledge, his study, you know, all those things. It's just crazy for me to even think that I'm going to achieve anything like that. So try to keep that in mind. Don't beat yourselves up, okay? Just accept that this is salmon pink. Just accept that we have come from different points in time. You know, embrace that, learn from him, and you never know what's going to happen. You might be pleasantly surprised. You might be slightly disappointed, but do not beat yourself up about whatever happens. It's got a bit more of a yellowish tinge to it, but I'm going to bring in woody brown to use with this. A little bit of woody brown with a bit of salmon pink in it, I think, will be nice. Now the paper copes with these light washes reasonably well. It is warping a little bit, just to be expected. It isn't watercolour paper. So I really don't think it's going to cope with my usual extremely heavy-handed use that I do. But light washes you know, it's okay. And I think when placed under a heavy book, when I've finished, it will flatten out to a certain extent. Now this salmon pink is a nice sort of colour, but I do like it with the woody brown. And I'm going a little bit different to what Ken has done with his coral for the time being. I'm not sure at this point in time whether I'm going to come back with coloured pencil at the end, but I suspect that I will. If only just to sort of darken and strengthen up some colours. Now when you're applying these washes and you've already got some colour down, you need to be very careful that that first wash of colour is dry, or you need to trust yourself and your brush skills enough that you're going to go very close to the edge without getting close enough that those colours are going to bleed into each other. Because there is nothing more frustrating than when watercolour blends when you don't want it to and the colours become muddy. That is very frustrating. I'm also going to use that very lightly on the fish here and then come back with some reddish orangey colours later. But I quite like that salmon pink. For the base. And I'm going to use the woody brown, which to me does not look like brown at all. And I still had a little bit of that pink on there that I've mixed in with it. And I'm also going to use a bit of that salmon pink there. I'm guessing this is the sun going down. And what I'm going to try here is just touching a little bit of that pen tip directly into there. And that is blending much nicer than it did on the Amazon printed book. So the paper here is not glossy, but it's got that very smooth paper that, you know, isn't too toothy. So it's kind of gliding over the top of it much nicer than the Amazon paper. Just seemed to suck it up straight away and absorb it. Now, because I've done that, I'm just going to experiment a little bit here and see what the pen does when it's used directly onto the paper like that. Might be hard to see on the camera, but it is dissolving it and diluting it very slightly, and it's very subtle. It's quite nice. So that's quite good. So I think that I might do something similar. I'm going to use a mix of, actually no, I don't want pink. Naples yellow. Let's put a little bit of Naples yellow in there. And I'm going to put a little bit of that into here. I'm just looking at the picture, which is off camera, but the left-hand side picture, I'm just having a look where Ken has used certain colours and just placing mine with reference to that. And then I'm going to use the salmon pink directly on here and see what happens when I try blending this. So I would say that I do like these koi colouring brush pens very much. If I remember correctly, they weren't the cheapest product on the market. However, for ease of use, sometimes it can be well worth paying a little bit more just to get that sort of comfortable product to use. I've got a little bit of orange I'm going to introduce into this now. So my feeling is that if you can afford them and you'd like to try them, I'd maybe start with one of the small curated sets first and see what you think of them. If you've got other water-based markers and you don't actually need any new markers at the moment, you know, you're quite okay for markers, I would say don't rush out and buy them, sit on it, use up what you have first, and then if you feel like when you need to buy some replacements, whether you'd like to try something different, perhaps they would be worth a look, only if they're in your budget. There are very few things that I would tell someone is a must buy. I'm very much of the school of thought that we can get by with a lot less than we think we can. This one is vermilion. Because the more we have, the more we use, the less we actually experiment and the less that we problem solve and think about colour mixing and creative colour choices and so on. When it's all there laid out in front of us, we don't need to think about it too much. All we need to actually do is actually sometimes restrict ourselves because we've got so much choice, it becomes confusing. So I sometimes think that actually inhibits and holds back some creativity. So I would say, you know, have a think about it. If you're not really in the market for needing markers at the moment, hold off. Perhaps watch the price and see if you can get any on a good deal somewhere. But if you can't afford it and you've got Crayola Super Tips or other sort of, you know, cheaper no-name brand ones off of Amazon, you know, give this method a go using what you have. It's always really nice obviously to treat ourselves to new supplies and so on, but you know, I'm running out of storage space for some of my things, and I've got stuff stored away that is not easily accessible at the moment, that I'm forgetting that I've even got. So it's crazy to sort of keep buying new things when I actually don't need them. So yeah, just, you know, be conscious of your buying power, and you know, put them on your Christmas list or gift list or something, and hold off if you're not actually needing some markers right now. I'm going to start putting some orange into this guy here. And I'm not completely matching the other page, but I don't, you know, that wasn't my goal, so I'm okay with that. I'm just really looking at what Ken has done, and then looking at what I've actually got on the plate already and what is similar, and I'm just choosing the similar colours, getting that sort of base colour scheme going. I will lift it up to show you just how similar or not similar this is to Ken's at the end. So if you've never watercoloured before, a book like this is really, really handy to show you how somebody very skilled in watercolour actually puts their colour palettes together. Because watercolour, traditional or you know, regular watercolour methods are very different to any other way of working. I've talked about it before, but I'll just sort of reiterate and touch on it again now. The goal generally with traditional style watercolour painting is to begin with your lightest colours and build the colour up. Preserve the white of the paper for your highlights. And you know, not to bring those darks until the very end when you're entirely sure that that's where you want it, because it is near on impossible to remove all the colour if you go too dark. And you know, the goal is sort of, well, traditionally was very light and airy. And they weren't, you know, watercolours weren't generally going for photorealism. They were used much more loosely and relaxed, much more of an impression, quite often used as studies before a painter would work in oils. You know, a colour study, or just getting familiar with a subject before they committed to working with oils, which were obviously a lot more expensive and time consuming, and you know, it took a long time to paint a portrait in oils compared with a very quick, loose watercolour wash study. And so when I went to art classes, I was advised by the teacher that if I wanted to work in, because I'd never painted at all, if I wanted to work in oil paints or even acrylic paints, she recommended that I begin with watercolour, because it's the reverse order of painting pretty much from oils and acrylics and other more opaque mediums. And a lot of people, according to her, a lot of people really struggled to get their head around the order of, you know, how to layer the colours and how to work lightly after painting with oil and acrylic. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. I'll start with watercolour. And I really thoroughly enjoyed using watercolours. I've mentioned before that I don't particularly follow the established rules for how to work with watercolour. But the goal had been that one day I would get around to having a go with oil paint and other painting methods, and to this day I still haven't. I've never gotten around to having a go with oil paints. So you know, I thought to myself I had that scope and that time to go and do it when I had exhausted watercolour and felt like I didn't have anything else to learn about watercolour. But I've stuck with watercolour because I've just enjoyed it, and I feel like there's still so much more that I could achieve and learn. I like that there's less clean-up, it's much more portable, and here I am still dabbling with watercolours. So always try and save your very dark darks, your black, working with your dark colours until later along in the process. Certainly get all your lighter colours in and an idea of what you're doing before you go starting to put your dark darks in. You can, of course, always use other things to add or reinstate white highlights, but if you'd like to try and paint in a traditional manner, the goal is first up to try and avoid that. got dark warm grey here, and I'm actually going to start putting the eyes in. I feel like some pictures, they come alive for me once the eyes are as they should be. So of course I'm going to be careful that I don't put any heavy water near this dark grey, because it will immediately bleed if I do. So that's coming along quite nicely. It doesn't look like Ken's. It's similar, but it does not look like Ken's. I'm just going to put some water on there. And drop the colour in there, because I want it to be really randomly washy. Colour that's not overly dark. Once again, I'm holding my brush right back, and that is at this point because I just really want to touch that tip and let the pigment work its way in to those wet areas and not overwork it too much. My blue here is much stronger than what Ken's version is. So I'm going to take a little break. I need to get myself a drink of water or something. The fire needs some attention, and I have a dog to go check on. So I may leave this here. I think that's a decent amount done for this first part, which is almost 45 minutes. So that is my little guy there, and how that's coming along, and that is Ken's. Sorry for knocking the camera. At the very end I'll try to do a side-by-side comparison. So there you go, that's the Koi colouring brush pen and working in that book. Okay, thanks for keeping me company. and I will see you in part 2. Bye now.